Hang on a sec. Instagram, I'm just getting my Facebook account up. I think I'm here. Okay, so thank you for being here. My name is Kristine Weber. I think most of you know me. My style of yoga is called subtle yoga, and actually today I wanted to talk about yoga styles and why it's important to define what yoga is in this saturated marketplace. So I was thinking about how when I first started teaching yoga in the mid-90s, there were a few different styles of yoga. You know, there was Iyengar. Actually, when I was living in San Francisco in the late 80s and early 90s, there was the Iyengar Institute, and that was kind of it. And then there were some other like little yoga studios around, but yoga was sort of, it was still this fringe thing, you know, it was still sort of over there with Tai Chi and Qigong, and it was not the mainstream phenomenon that it's become at all, you know, back then. So you had, you had the Iyengar Institute, you had Iyengar Yoga, Kundalini Yoga had just sort of cropped up, but it wasn't very well known. It was also considered kind of fringy, and there were a few other people teaching what people would call Hatha Yoga. So that was back in the late 80s, early 90s. And, you know, the thing now has exploded so that I was just looking it up on Wikipedia. Let me see if I can find it here. So I was looking, I think I closed myself down. No, I didn't. I'm still here. Good. Glad I'm still here. Hope you still are too. So I was looking on Wikipedia. Wikipedia actually has 52 different styles of yoga. Agni Yoga, Ananda Yoga, I'm not going to read them all, but anti-gravity fitness yoga. And then there's, I don't know, the usuals, like, like Ashtanga. There's, on Wikipedia, you actually can find the definition of beer yoga. Let's just for fun, let's see what they say the definition of beer yoga is. Beer yoga is a term coined by Brooke Larson of Beer Yoga LLC in February 2014. Beer yoga or brewery yoga is a form of yoga in which attendees practice yoga at breweries or tap rooms, sometimes drinking beer while performing yoga moves. Go figure. So there is a lot of stuff out there, that I wasn't talking about the goat yoga. Goat yoga gets in there. And then there's like the silks that have come in and the acro yoga stuff. And, so when I'm looking at these 52 styles of yoga that are just listed on Wikipedia, those are only the ones that have been sort of trademarked, Hang on one sec, folks. It looks like I'm having a glitch in the video here. Okay, I'm back. So at any rate, we know that there's so many different styles of yoga out there, and traditionally that wasn't the case. Things have really kind of morphed into something different, into something very American, like beer, goat, kitten, acro, whatever kind of yoga. These are very American kind of iterations of the product. When I first started teaching yoga, or when I first started training yoga teachers, I created this manual in 2006. I created my manual, and I update my manual every year, of course. This is the one from this year. But I had just opened it to this page that I wrote back in 2006, although, I've updated a little bit. About what is yoga, definitions of yoga, and why is it so important? I'm going to talk about this in a moment, but why is it so important to define yoga? In the absence of our defining yoga, yoga will be defined by the marketplace. Those are the rules of free market capitalism. If you don't define it, it gets defined for you. And that's just fine. Yoga can get defined by the free market, the capitalist marketplace at free market capitalism, and that's fine. That's gonna happen, but that doesn't mean that we, as long-time yoga professionals or even short-time yoga professionals, people that are serious about it, can't also be involved in the process of definition. And what I've found traveling around and teaching yoga is that everywhere I go, every time I teach yoga, the most important thing for me to do is start unpacking in the beginning, right? Is unpack that definition. Because if I don't, it just gets defined in the vacuum by whatever somebody has heard yoga is in the marketplace, right? It just gets defined that way. So people, I remember when I first started teaching in 1995, I was teaching a little seminar at a bookstore, and I was like, so, here I am all naive, fresh back off the boat from India. And I'm like, so I teach Tantra yoga. And I remember that I was teaching Tantra yoga, and this person was there who was like, so when are we going to start talking about all the salacious stuff? And I was like, what? And she was like, well, I want to talk about the different sexual positions and stuff. And my virgin years, my yoga virgin years, because I had no clue that was going to be a thing. I had just learned the word Tantra as meaning the technology of ecstasy. And I learned it by sitting at the feet of teachers in India who had no interest or, even capacity to talk about, extracurricular activities in the hot tub after yoga class. Like, no, they would never think of talking about sexuality in the context of Tantra, right? So you have to make you have to define. There must be definitions for yoga, and if we don't define them, the vacuum is there and it gets filled, right, by whatever. So these are some of the things that I'm going to get to another point momentarily, but these are some of the things that I was looking at Wikipedia, these 52 different definitions of yoga. When I did my manual, I talked about some of the traditional definitions of yoga, like yoga is the control of the fluctuations of the mind. Everybody knows that one, right, from the Yoga Sutra. This is from the Bhagavad Gita. Yoga is skill in the performance of actions. And of course, the Bhagavad Gita has many definitions of yoga, but that's one of them. The Yoga Bhashya says yoga is bliss, yoga is samadhi. Yoga Yajnavalkya, the definition is yoga is the union of the individual psyche with the transcendent self, Jivatma and Paramatma. Those were some of the traditional definitions of yoga. How did yoga manifest traditionally? It manifested as things like Raja Yoga, right, which means these deep meditation states, the yoga of the kings, and Hatha Yoga, the yoga of bringing together the sun and the moon, or uniting the opposites, the forceful yoga. Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge. Karma Yoga, the yoga of action. Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. Laya Yoga, the yoga of dissolution of the small self into the larger one, or that often was a yoga that's based on chakras. I have a whole book on the subtle body called Laya Yoga. There was Mantra Yoga and Kriya Yoga, that idea of using particular actions to purify some skaras. Nada Yoga, the yoga of sound. Buddhi Yoga, the yoga of kind of intellect, discriminative wisdom and intellect. So many different kinds of yoga traditionally. And then when I think about traditional yoga in terms of my experience and my involvement in the yoga world for these several decades, I understood yoga as Hatha Yoga. Of course, those are the first classes that anybody took were called Hatha. There's called a Hatha Yoga, like Lilius on PBS was teaching Hatha Yoga, and Ashtanga Yoga, and then Iyengar Yoga and Kundalini Yoga. There was Kripalu Yoga, has been around for a while. Bikram is a yoga that started to come a little bit later, right? Maybe we saw more of that in the 90s, and then it started to get really popular before that. And it was just called Hot Yoga. And then Vinyasa Yoga. Where does Vinyasa come from? I mean, Vinyasa has been the most popular style, right? And where did it come from? It came from Pattabhi Jois teaching these certain set routines, these series, he called them, the primary series, the secondary series, of specific sequences of asanas. And then his students in California being like, well, we don't always want to do the same sequence. We want it to be kind of interesting. We want to do some different things. We don't always want to do the same thing. And so from that, they said, we're going to break off from the school of Ashtanga and we're going to call it Vinyasa. And Vinyasa then just sort of like exploded because it was the first time that Americans could, get their freak flag on and do what they really wanted to do with their asana practice. So it turned into, kind of like a flowy, dancey, fun exercise kind of routine. So those were some of the kind of more traditional ones. And now you see a tremendous proliferation of different styles of yoga. And I'm part of that. I coined the term subtle yoga back in 2003 and trademarked it because I thought, I see what's happening in the marketplace. I better trademark it. And decided I was going to differentiate. And this is not just a marketing thing. It's a authenticity thing, because I felt like it was really important. I don't teach slow flow or gentle yoga. I teach something that is beneficial to the physiology and via the neuroendocrine system, the subtle body. And that's how I wanted to describe, and I wanted to explain what I taught. So that goes back to that initial assertion I made. It's in the absence of defining yoga, the marketplace will do it for us, right? So one of the things I've been really crafting and working on in terms of my messaging, in terms of how I talk about yoga, in terms of how I deliver it, and also in terms of how I train teachers and ask them to deliver content, is this idea that essentially in America, there are two categories, you could say, two major categories. And then there's some intersection, but I think it's useful to think in terms of this model that there's the difference between fitness-based yoga and what I like to call resiliency building yoga, or nervous system yoga, or subtle or physiologically based yoga. So I kind of break it down to fitness yoga, resilience yoga. And as I said, there's definitely some crossover, but it's a useful model to create this dichotomy, because it helps people to understand that we're allowed to have different purposes and different goals when we do our practice, right? So when you think about fitness yoga, think about fitness yoga. This is like yoga fit kind of yoga, which I don't think was on the list. I think we'll add that to the list too. So it's kind of like a yoga fit kind of yoga, or hot, sweaty yoga, Bikram kind of yoga, the kinds of yoga that are the intention of that yoga is build strength, build muscle, sweat, increase metabolism, improve cardiovascular health. That is the goal. And if you can define that kind of yoga, and that's the kind of yoga you want to teach, and that's what your students understand that you're offering, then great. You've got that fitness model has been around for a long time. Really, it's been around for more than 50 years. This idea, not fitness yoga, but the idea of fitness has been around for more than 50 years, that we understand that the body needs strong cardiovascular exercise. Like, it's so well known, it's so clear in all the literature and all the research, and that it has just become part of our culture, and people don't even need research anymore to understand that, right? We know. And even though we know all that, by the way, the statistics show that only 20% of the population actually exercises, right? That's interesting. That means there's 80% of the people out there that maybe don't want to do fitness-based yoga, and maybe they would be more interested in this nervous system resiliency building yoga. So that's the dichotomy that I've been trying to work with. Here's the fitness yoga, and I just talked about what the benefits are. And then over here is what I like to call the resilience building yoga, the nervous system yoga, the physiology improving yoga, the balancing yoga. And these are slow, mindful, internal, intuitive, and deeply personal practices in a way. I mean, you can still do them in a group. And in fact, I would argue that you need both. You need both strong exercise, which you may get through fitness yoga, you might get it through another kind of fitness activity, and you also need mindful movement. And that's not something that I'm really just pulling out of the air, by the way. It's based on the research I've been doing. Here, look, Let me show you what's on my desk. This is a folder that I keep. Can you see it? It says interoception, which is just full of annotated research studies that I read when I'm really geeking out on this stuff, that explain why we need slow mindful movement and how it's so critical to our system. I think in this time that we're living in of high stress and so much high stress and so much activity and so much busyness and constant bombardment of information via the internet, that this kind of resilience building practice it's essential. It's there's no doubt in my mind that it is a key piece to staying well and healthy despite the onslaught of information and busyness that our culture gives us, and also creating better health and creating wellness. And so it's in that category of creating health and wellness. It's also in the category, it also fits very beautifully in the category of treatment, right? Because the other piece is that there are many, many chronically ill people out there. So you can say we're defining yoga, right? And you say, my yoga is fitness-based yoga. That's great. 20% of the population exercises. So you got 1 out of 5 people that might need your kind of yoga. But if you define your yoga as resiliency building yoga, there are a large number of the population, I don't know that statistic, that are dealing with chronic pain, chronic illnesses like diabetes and heart disease and metabolic syndrome and obesity. And they're dealing with low energy, they're dealing with autoimmune problems, and they probably don't have enough energy to get themselves to fitness or even have the desire to do fitness-based stuff. But some of those people might be willing to try something that is resiliency building, that helps their nervous system to start to overcome some of the challenges that have been leveled upon it by the inordinate amount of stress that we are under in our culture right now. So this is not just stress reduction. I also want to make that clear. It's not just about stress reduction. It's not just about relaxation. It's about slow mindful movement and the neurobiologic benefits that kind of practice confers. It is just as important to your health as cardiovascular exercise. And the research is starting to demonstrate it. And here's what I think. Those few of you, there's like about 8 of you on the video right now. Here's what I want you to know. This is the secret I want you to take away from this live stream, and hold it dear in your heart, that because I know a lot of you're all like amazing yoga teachers, and your capacity to deliver this practice is like gold. You're sitting on top of a gold mine. I'm not talking about like financially, although that might be the case too, but I'm talking about just in the incredible capacity for health and healing that you understand how to deliver, and other people don't. So if you feel small or you feel bad because you're not out there teaching one-armed handstands, I want you to like let go of that inferiority feeling, because nothing could be further from the reality, which is that you hold the key to health for so many people, and they need you desperately. They just don't know it yet. So part of my mission is to help get that out there a little bit more, help people to understand why this stuff is so important, and to create the possibility for more yoga teachers to be able to work in non-traditional settings. I was just talking to my friend who works at a yoga studio, and a very busy yoga studio, and she was telling me they're not even doing their 300-hour advanced training this year because they just didn't get enough people signed up for it. And in my mind, what that really speaks to is this idea that fitness doesn't need a lot of training. Now, I'm sorry if you're a fitness professional and you have a ton of training, because probably, it's good, but if you go to the gym, like the teacher may or may not have that much training. And we think the same thing about yoga teachers because we put them in the fitness category. Whereas the yoga professionals that are more in that resilience building category have a deeper understanding of physiology, of neurobiology, of movement sciences, of mind-body connection, of mindfulness. They have a deeper understanding of that stuff, and therefore a more sophisticated way of being able to deliver that service. And it's necessary, right? And my opinion is that when this stuff, we're at the beginning of the bell curve. I'll go this way since I'm on camera. We're at the beginning of the bell curve, and at that beginning of the bell curve, there's not a lot of early adopters. There's some people that are starting to get it, a few thousand people, but as we start that climb and we start to reach the middle of the bell curve, that we're going to be inundated with people who need this kind of work, and who need and who are searching out, who are seeking for a yoga professional who understands how to do this. And there's just we don't have enough people that are well trained enough to do it. We've got a heap of people. There's about 300,000 people that have been trained as 200-hour yoga teachers. We got heaps of the fitness people, but do we have people that really understand resiliency, that really understand the science of slow? I don't think so. I think that's something that we are working towards, and that's part of my mission. That's what I'm trying to do with my training programs. And I just invite you to hop on the bandwagon and follow some of the stuff that I post, and the articles I post about public health and yoga, the articles I post about neuroscience and yoga. Because if you can keep on top of that stuff, it's going to really help you up your game and be able to, reach more people and be able to help people understand why this stuff is so important. So I'm in the process of working on an online program about the science of slow movement. I'll let you know when I get it ready. It's getting ready. It takes a while, but I'm getting closer to having it ready. I really appreciate you being here. Maybe this is a good time to talk because a few people are here. Leave questions, leave comments. I'll be back on. I'm going to do a couple more live streams. I'll be back on again over the next few days, and I'll let you know as I get ready to launch this training, this online training. So nice to see you all. Thank you for being here. I'm going to wave to all the people because you get this little wave button you can touch on Instagram. So I'm waving to everybody on Instagram. And thank you, Jackie and Diana and Jessica for being here and a few other people that I can't see who are here on, and Bo Post. Thanks for being here. Because it's really nice to have you and know I'm not just talking to the thin air out there. Okay, take care. Love you. Namaste.